We have movement in the vacant EFL Championship job market, and it is Phillipe Clement and it is Norwich City who are going first. 4 jobs open all at once. Makes my life very hard. It's made for a very busy international break, but Norwich have solved us one problem here. It's not Middlesbrough, it's not Swansea, it's not Southampton. Norwich react first, and Phillipe Clement is going to be announced as their new manager today, according to EFL spokesman John Percy. I jest. Telegraph journalist John Percy, who seems to have a direct line from literally every championship club. This was him a couple of hours ago on Twitter. Norwich are hopeful of appointing former Rangers manager Phillipe Clement as their new head coach today. Clement has been out of management since leaving Rangers in February and is set to take training on Tuesday. Norwich also interviewed Jon Thomason and Gary O'Neill. Interesting, because if you told me a couple of weeks ago a former Rangers manager would be in the market to become the next Norwich manager, I would have been very distracted looking at Russell Martin. And look, we'll talk about Clement, we'll talk about Norwich this season. Let's just talk about the international break, because obviously Liam Manning was sacked at the end of the block of games, that defeat against Leicester. And I think it started, and the 3 names we were hearing were Russ Martin, Will Still, and Gary O'Neill. And I wonder whether Gary O'Neill is going to be linked with all 4 of these championship jobs and ultimately end up getting none of them, or getting the last one that's open. That then kind of drifted away from Still and Russ Martin, and Jon Thomason's name came up along with kind of Gary O'Neill as well. And that looked like there was something in that. It kind of appeared and was put forward by reputable names, but there was always this little whisper in the background. There's an unknown name that's going to come through and take this, and that name, I say unknown, not unknown to British football supporters, former Coventry player, former Rangers manager, but it's a name that wasn't forward in the conversation. So fair play to Norwich for keeping that really quiet until today. And Phillipe Clement has kind of gone to the front of the queue. Percy is saying that Thomason and O'Neill were interviewed. So he's talked his way through the door here if they were prepared to speak to all 3 of them. You never know with the interview process. Sometimes people have an idea of who they want to hire, and you're almost just, stress testing that feeling by interviewing other people. But Clement is going to be the next Norwich manager, according to Percy, and Connor, our friend at the Pinken, has gone all in. Norwich are set to announce former Rangers, Monaco and Club Brugge manager Phillipe Clement as their new head coach. Let's talk a bit about Clement and his managerial career. So he's Belgian. He's 51. So whether you think this is important or not, a little bit older than a few of the other candidates. If the idea is Norwich need a strong, older statesman candidate to go in, therefore the flip reverse of that argument is they don't need a young, untested manager, then maybe there's some kind of box ticked there. I mean, he's not 71, he's 51, but you get what I'm saying. Managed, here we go with some pronunciation fun, Vassland, Beveren, Genk, and Club Brugge. I believe they're all in Belgium. And I think he won the league with both of those sides. Sorry, let me do some scrolling here. Yeah, Belgian Pro League winner with Genk, and then twice with Club Brugge. So he did it 3 seasons in a row. You can have your thoughts on the transferability of skills and viability of a manager who is successful in Belgium as it then pertains to the EFL Championship. I mean, let's be honest, no league is like the Championship, is it? A, with the 46 games and the 3-game weeks and then the playoffs at the end of it, and B, with the crazy combination of the parachute teams with sort of ex-Premier League players and, players that could probably play in the Champions League at some point in their career, go into teams that have come up from League One with, smaller third and fourth tier setups. It's a unique division. What I will say is anyone who's won a league anywhere, that's never a bad thing. And Belgium, I don't know where you rank it. It's not obviously up there with your England, Italy. I suppose more you go in Netherlands, Portugal, which people do rank the Championship alongside, and then you kind of drop down to Belgium, that level there. Although, I suppose that was where Vincent Kompany did his work, and he did all right in the Championship. But, look, whether it's a relevant comparison or not, when Kompany obviously played his entire career at the top level. I'm reaching for comparisons here. What I will say is, and I know we'll get comments saying, yeah, Ben, Mick Beale and Russ Martin also managed Rangers, but that's no small thing. And whether getting the job is difficult or not, and whether top managers go for that job, doing that job will surely improve you as a manager, won't it? Absolute goldfish bowl up there in Glasgow. So if you're wanting to hire somebody who's good with pressure and they've managed in that kind of pressure cooker environment, I guess that helps, when you're coming into a Norwich side where I think the remit is basically just get them away from relegation in the short term and, bring them back into a viable, challenging Championship team in the long term. I'll never lie to you on this channel. I don't know too much about Clement's style of play or style as a manager. I'll obviously learn about that as we go. But I think regardless of football style and tactics and whatnot, you're going into a club that has absolutely stunk the joint out and, we think has grossly underachieved. They've surely underachieved. Whatever extent they have underachieved, they've underachieved to some extent. Norwich to be down there. They've just not traditionally been down there over the years, and they've spent a good deal of cash. The point I'm trying to make in a rather long-winded way is you've just got to go in there. You've got to get trust out of the players. You've got to instill confidence. You've got to sweep clean with a new broom, and you've got to just win some games and get things moving because obviously it's been complete disaster at Norwich, which then kind of brings us to the bigger points. And I've had a few texts from some Norwich friends, and my mate Russ, who's very knowledgeable on Norwich, said, well, here's where we find out whether Ben Napper has just signed a load of duff players. And that is the big worry for Norwich, because if there is big problems with the sporting director and the overall structure at Norwich, and the players that have been signed for a good deal of money, and I don't want to call out specifics, but people like Cernak and Jurisic and Topic and Medic, all players force on that have come in recent times under Ben Napper. If he signed players who aren't good enough, it doesn't matter who the manager is. You're firefighting then, aren't you? It's going to be very, very difficult, and that will be a big problem. I happen to think that is not the case, and there is some quality there. Kovacevic, the goalkeeper. Darling at centre-back. McLean's got experience. Sargent is excellent. He's a good player. And I think if you can get someone who can nurture the others around them, it may have to be a short-term view taken straight away of play experienced players, be hard to beat, win games, just punch your way and move up the table. And then you can do the integration thing over the long term, because yeah, be under no illusions. Norwich, if they get this wrong in any kind of way, are at risk of being relegated, which would be absurd given the past seasons in the Championship. But Luton dropped with a year one parachute payment. If you get it all wrong, all in a row, and bad decisions compound, you will get relegated. And I suppose the worst case scenario for Norwich is there's been systemic problems that have been creeping up. They've got the wrong guy as sporting director. They've signed the wrong players, and it won't work with Clement, and they'll go to a third manager this season and they'll be relegated. That's the absolute worst case scenario. I don't see it like that. And I don't know. I quite like the hire, and I quite like the fact that he's not been in the Championship before. I know we spoke, I suppose Gary O'Neill, Premier League manager, wasn't he, with Bournemouth and with Wolves. And I just feel if it had been Will Still or it had been Russ Martin, and it's a bit like, it doesn't feel very fresh and very new in that regard. Whereas if you take somebody like Phillipe Clement, who's not been in the division before and is an unknown quantity in terms of the EFL, maybe that can have, I think the word we're talking about is impact, and Norwich need quick impact now. So I like it. Obviously, it's been disastrous, and all sporting directors tell us they do succession planning and they have a list of managers, but be under no illusions. Norwich did not expect to be in this position in, going into round 16 with this big load of fixtures coming up to take us through to Christmas. It was a big contract in terms of the length for Liam Manning. They've got rid of a manager who'd only been in 1 year in Johannes Hoff-Torp. They've taken a manager who's been working at another Championship club and just finished in the playoffs. The plan long term was Liam Manning, and we've done that to death. Why that did or did not work out, you can, you're at liberty to discuss. But here we go now with Phillipe Clement. Who the hell knows? I don't mind it, as I say, for the reasons in terms of, some experience, bit more statesman-like value, not a young EFL head coach. Shake things up, get a bit of impact, used to pressure at Rangers, used to winning in Belgium. You compound all those positives, you get a good outcome. But yeah, what is he picking up? Is he picking up a hot potato? Is he picking up a hospital pass here? We will find out. I quite like it, and I do feel and have felt for the longest time, and I could be wrong, that eventually Norwich and Sheffield United, just by being average, will move out of those relegation places and they'll be filled with other clubs. But stranger things have happened. Phillipe Clement, the first in. Get your thoughts down there in the comments. Make sure you've hit subscribe, by the way, and thumbs up on the video and on the YouTube bits and bobs there. Let me know your thoughts. How do you see it going? Do you think it's a good hire? Would Thomason, O'Neill have been better? And does this affect what Middlesbrough and Swansea and Southampton are now going to do? It's all interweaving and interlinked. But how, most importantly in this regard, is it going to affect Norwich? And it's a simple question, isn't it? Will Phillipe Clement lead Norwich to safety? He's going to be the new name in the dugout at Carrow Road. Get down there in the comments and give me your thoughts.